Respected Mrs. Yasaswy, Dr. Y.K. Bhushan, my colleague from banking system, Mr. M.V. Nair, Professor Binakshi Dhariwal, Professor Hema Sisodia, invited guests, faculty members, and dear students. When I visited on the occasion of Silver Jubilee celebrations and met the great Mr. N.J. Yasaswy, I was hoping that this friendship would culminate into a long relationship, because right from mid-70s I had heard of Mr. Yasaswy as a star in the firmament of financial sector. I was told by another good friend, Basant Raj, who was those days at Administrative Staff College and a consultant, about Mr. Yasaswy, and last year came the opportunity and he invited me to Hyderabad. In fact, in our social life we meet a lot of people, they say come and visit us, we'll organize something for you. But as soon as I reached Hyderabad, I got an invitation from him. Not only that, it was followed up by the Vice Chancellor of ICFAI University. I remember I could not go, but during one of the visits to Hyderabad, I asked my host, can you arrange my meeting with Mr. Yasaswy? I want to meet him. And he informed me only yesterday he expired. And I could not continue my rest of the visit to Hyderabad. I was so shocked. But I am lucky that I met him. From the work that he has done, I think this title is very appropriate, because he was an educational entrepreneur and a leader. And he started this whole revolution of ICFAI universities and IBS at a time when it was not usual to get into the educational entrepreneurial drive. Chartered accountant that he was, a rank holder both in intermediate and the final examination, he could have started his own consulting firm. He would have been, anybody. But instead he dared to start these institutions. At a time when it was not fashionable for private entrepreneurs to start such ventures, education was in government sector. Therefore, people who can see future in advance and can create a new future for a discipline are truly the leaders who dare. Therefore, today, in the memory of such a great person, it would be in fitness and appropriate to talk about certain dimensions of leadership. Leadership although looks a very romantic idea. The moment somebody is promoted, occupies a position, we say he is in a leadership position. It looks very romantic. You read textbooks, you read articles. It looks as if it is such a smooth flow to lead. Yet there is deficit of leadership in this world. A most famous leadership guru, Warren Bennis, he remarked that world has less fear from nuclear armaments than the deficit of leadership. So you can imagine how dangerous are societies, communities, institutions, organizations without adequate and competent leadership. And today we are experiencing the syndrome of some sort of anemic leadership, whether at national level or elsewhere. In fact, the term has become so popular that if we find a problem anywhere, even a common man says there is no leadership, thereby showing expectations as to what leaders are supposed to do, which they are not doing. It's never enough to have great natural resources or abundant human capital or even growth without leadership. Leadership is something that can convert all this to public good and service. That is the essence. You may have everything, huge natural resources, huge human capital, but that conversion factor, who can trigger the nuclear reaction to convert all this into positive outcomes, is the leadership. So leadership is the single thing which has potential either to multiply or destroy. Such is the nature of leadership. In our own lifetime we have seen great institutions are built by great people. And when transition takes place in less than a year, people show genius to destroy those institutions. What has been built in several decades. So we can appreciate what is this all about, that so much is being written about it, so much is being talked about it. And we need to understand the fundamental nature of leadership. Interestingly and funnily, we claim that we are developing leaders. Academic institutions claim, corporations claim, and sometimes I see that leaders are produced like Vicks vapor of tablets on a conveyor belt through a training program. We have produced 50 leaders. Corporations organizing training program, and now training program, because leaders are very reluctant to undergo programs, so many innovative and creative processes of having a part B of the program somewhere in Europe and America, and you find 40 people are attending, 50 people are attending, and they go, get polished, come back, but nothing changes. I would be very blunt and provocative in this talk, because growth in emerging economies, which have held them back for several years, always have created some unintended consequences. Growth itself is not the ultimate thing. You see, with GDP growth, even in India, our leadership index has come down. And I think some behavioral economists need to study this, that how with growth of GDP in nations, the leadership index comes down. All this what we are hearing today, in fact, there is not one newspaper headline in last 6 months which is not talking of scams, corruption, leaders' conduct. So sometimes I wonder, India is growing, but is leadership degenerating? If this is the nature of leadership, then it becomes all the more important to look at it. As you know, doing business in India is the most difficult thing. I am not saying it's a World Bank. Human Development Index is one of the lowest even in emerging economies. Poverty, as we all know, both visible and hidden, does not go away. And if you look at in our own Bombay, how prosperity and the adversity, the victims of adversity, I think About 3 million people sleep on the roads of Bombay. What a strange paradox of growth we see around us. And why all this happens? There are no deficit of resources in this country. You need positively inspired souls to construct 10,000 toilets in Bombay, if nothing else. If there are so many billionaires are living in Bombay, do you think we cannot construct 10,000 toilets in Bombay? But this shows this again a deficit problem. So therefore any measure and index of India by GDP is, I think, a mirage. This is a self-deception. And we need leadership is a dangerous business. I am not saying, two Harvard professors have said, and I quote, "If it was simple to have leaders, we will not be talking about this today. Leadership is essentially a risky business. A status quo is a comforting situation. You disturb people when you take unpopular initiatives, put provocative ideas in the organization, question the gap between colleagues' values and ask friends and relatives to face up to realities. You risk people's ire and make yourself more vulnerable. Exercising leadership can get you into trouble," said Hefties and Linsky of John F. Kennedy School of Governance, Harvard University. So leadership is a serious business, risky business, and therefore the word daring is the most appropriate word for it, because it is not everyone's cup of tea. But people can be groomed. A culture can be created that we can create more leaders to produce positive outcomes. Yet in spite of this, leadership is an enterprise worthy of its cost. We cannot give up. Our organizations and societies have to take up the challenge of leading. To adapt a phrase from Johnny Cash, we believe you can walk the line, step forward, make a difference, take the heat, and survive to delight in the fruits of labor. By making the lives of people around us better, our leadership can provide meaning in their lives. In the new paradigm, we need leaders who can speed lead. There was a time we used to groan and moan that our tenures are less. Today you find the entire literature on transformation is developing on 90 days agenda, 100 days agenda. Tenures can be dysfunctional. It can perpetuate status quo. It can perpetuate self-aggrandizement and interests. I am of the view, based on my own experience, that today we do not require leaders who talk of grand ideas in a very romantic way or sermonizing manner about do's and don'ts of leadership, about traits of leadership. We need leaders visible, accessible, and hands-on, who can be seen on the ground, who can use ground intelligence, who are accessible, and who are hands-on. And who are ready to put their job at stake to hold on to certain values. You all have heard Sridharan, more than 75-year-old person who created Delhi Metro. It was not easy for him to deal with myriad bureaucracy in Delhi, but it delivered, and there is only one Sridharan. Today we hear of CAG. I and Mr. Nair had the privilege of working with him directly. So therefore leaders have tremendous power. All they lack is, they have, if they can't perform, they have deficit intentions. Power is quite good. Those who cannot use this power, I think they are dangerous to system because they are holding high positions and are unworthy of using their power for positive outcomes. We all have faced problems, especially when we want to do something better, something good, something in the interest of the organization that we lead. But eventually, we are able to get over the problem, or worse still, we should offer to quit. Based on my own experience of life, I have listed some 10, these days we talk in terms of 10 and 11 or 12. So when I was writing, 11 were coming, I say, let me make it 10, it looks very good. First is, leadership is hierarchy neutral. It has nothing to do with designations. If I am chairman, I am an installed leader. And the organization has to suffer me. I am installed and, nothing more, nothing less. My own experience shows that a whole good number of people in the middle and lower level who have leadership potential but no power. Sometimes people at the top have power but not competence. People in the middle have competence but no power. Study this. Power without traits and traits without power. I think our academic community can study this. What is this phenomenon? Second, leadership is not about power and perquisites. It is about responsibility and accountability. Most of us, our family members boast, my son has become now general manager, he will have air-conditioned car, his house will be bigger. He had earlier 1 ton AC at home, now he will have 2 ton AC so that his mind is frozen. Question mark. With every promotion, our perquisites increase, and I have dealt with a case of this 1.5 ton AC, 2 ton AC. Finally, it freezes us. I don't think that's the intention. If it is about responsibility and accountability, there are very few takers for real roles for leadership. And therefore we end up installed leaders. Third, leadership is more about building intangibles rather than obsession with quarter-to-quarter results. Intangibles are building leadership itself in the organization, branding the organization, technology, and readying it for the future. I give you an example. There are, let us say, 2 corporations. Same amount of revenues, same amount of income, profit, but their P ratio varies significantly. The market capitalization varies significantly. This is a research by Dave Ulrich and Brockbank of Michigan. Why? Today, intangibles contribute to the 40% of market capitalization of the company. And yet, most people at the top, they are only talking business, business, business. The business of business is important. It is a survival issue. But there are thousands of people managing business. You can create intangibles. You can be in the business of intangibles. Obsession with day-to-day business at the top can be dysfunctional. My third code is micromanage excellence. Normally the word micromanagement for the top is shunned. But if you don't manage excellence at the top, I know a friend of mine who was a CEO. He told me, Mr. Khandelwal, I occasionally phone the telephone operator in my organization to find out after how many rings she lifts the phone. And because we have the notoriety of telephone operators not sitting on their chair, at least till some time back, either weaving or gossiping, male and female all together. If they are not weaving, they are doing something else. They are weaving politics. So this man was checking after how many rings he would invariably go to check toilets. When he moves in the organization, he will simply put his hand, dust, this, that. Half of the organization thought, this man is not worth leadership. Choti choti cheez dekhta hai, his mind is very small. He will do mystery shopping, but believe me, his organization was one of the classiest organization, because he was interested in this. So micromanage excellence. I will tell you a story. I am very fond of going to film city, seeing shootings since my 20 years. Even a chairman I went once in 6 months to see a film shooting. So I went to see a shooting. The film Yarana shooting was going on, and Madhuri Dixit, there was a dance, Mera Piya Ghar Aaya. You all remember? So I got bored. She was dancing so well, and she was coming something like my Piya Ghar Aaya. And this lady, this will not approve, Saroj Khan. I was getting irritated. I asked her, Madam, she is doing it all right. What's the problem? She is such an accomplished artist. I had gone through a VIP connection, so I had access to her. She said, you don't know, when she is dancing, her all fingers are not parallel. I said, I wouldn't notice it in the film. Then she told me a life's lesson in excellence. She said, if I knowingly make this concession here, lyricist makes another concession, music director makes another small concession, writer makes another some concession, what you will see will be a blurred movie. I got my life's lesson in micromanaging excellence. Fourth or fifth, leaders have very strong orientation for people. Nobody will say, I don't have a strong orientation for people, because that's the easiest thing. Very strong orientation, which is at deep psychological level, emotive level, compassion. Can somebody help me close this? You youngsters, I don't even know how to close this. That's the level of my literacy. So it's extremely important for leaders to have people orientation. My policy with regard to people orientation has been tough love, tough on performance and compassion for people. And believe me that in today's organization, which are carrying almost 24,000 kilowatt of what you call tension in the organization in terms of performance, unless performance expectations are coupled with high degree of compassion, it simply cannot work. And therefore leaders have to take charge. They are the chief compassionate officer of their organization. But people are outsourced either to trade unions or they are outsourced to personnel department, which I call tea and sympathy department. That come have a cup of tea, you have our sympathy, but we can't help you. Or these days, human resource is outsourced to consultants. They are having nice time. So the issue is, human resource is an undelegatable aspect of the chief executive. Trust me, I almost lost my job because people complain to ministry that I have BJP leanings. And you know, political parties are so paranoid about each other. That's on the lighter side. Seventh, leadership is about degree of personal and intellectual integrity. World over, Cosner's research, the whole book is on credibility, has shown, irrespective of caste, creed, color, cultures, North America, South America, East Europe, West Europe, India, if there is one thing, one quality people like to see in their leaders is the credibility, the saying-doing gap. Especially the top. When they go and address a gathering like this of their employees, they say, you are great, my organization is because of this, and outside they say they are my biggest problems. People know, they know that we don't work, still he is saying we are great. So therefore, credibility is the great thing. Then, leadership is about good governance, and leadership is about continuous learning and change agentry. The learning is very important. You must have heard of that great book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. I met Robin Sharma in one of the seminars, and he told me, every 90 days I learn a new skill. I said, how? Sometime I learn painting, sometime carpentry, I said, how can you do it? He said, I do it. Post-retirement I tried, and I can tell you, I learned swimming at the age of 63, with at least 24 efforts in the past I failed. I am learning classical Indian music. I purchased a harmonium recently, and a musician who comes to teach me is struggling because most of the time I am not available. Anyway, good intention, bad execution. I am aware, but I am working on it. Leadership is also about managing adversities. When you change, transform, lead, lot of adversities come. But leaders are not born in prosperity. They are born in adversity, the crucible of leadership. Remember the days or the day you were humiliated, you felt small and you decided you will prove somebody wrong. Adverse experiences are really triggers for development of leadership. So how can you develop leadership by sending people to a training program in Harvard or Wharton? You have to send them to manage municipal corporation of some Khatipura. You have to send people to Bombay to manage some wretched department of our public corporations. That brings you in touch with problems, that brings you in touch with people. And I think that is the adversity in which leaders are born. And finally, leadership is nothing but managing processes. It is not about content. The process of communication, the process of transparency, the process of bureaucracy, how things happen or don't happen, what is causing, what is stymieing our process of growth and development, all those processes. So let us face it, I think after my talk many people will abandon the idea of becoming a leader. But I can assure you, friends, it's a calling like marriage worth undertaking with all its problems. Therefore, it's a tough calling and requires huge amount of work at personal level. Leadership thus is always a work in progress. You can never feel that you have come at the Victoria terminus of leadership. It's a work in progress. We can create sustainable institutions, nations, organizations only through credible leadership. There is no shortcut to leadership. Therefore, it's not for weak-hearted or who think that through academic achievement they have become entitled to lead and enjoy, because leadership is not an entitlement. Leadership is not an entitlement but an extremely responsible calling. Mr. Yasaswy combined many of the above ingredients along with his academic achievements and left legacy of some of the most wonderful institutions that would always symbolize his vision, which was truly ahead of times. As Martin Luther King said, time is always right to do what is right. The tricky part is what is right. This is the essence of leadership. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Professor, for the